it was your dad, J.C., who was a policeman and I think later worked in the legal department for a bank. Your mom, Winnie, who worked at a phone company, and then your younger brother, Jim. How would you describe your dad?
My dad, his dad, had left the family, and so they were pretty much on their own with, his mother and siblings. It was a tough way to grow up. I would describe my dad as a real character, not afraid of anything, felt like he could whip everybody, and probably could. He was, and so everybody in town liked my dad. But there were times where my dad was, he'd come in with a cast on, and he'd been in fights or, got shot once, and he got in a huge wreck.
How did he get shot?
Well, he shot, actually, it was an accident type thing where they were out with some of his buddies, and they were, I think, in those days, it was bootlegging and stills and all that kind of stuff, and it was an accident. I think he got shot. But then he had a huge wreck. And
crashing his patrol car going 80 miles an hour into a telephone pole.
Yeah, that was scary for everybody because he had serious injuries, and it was probably almost a year before he got back. He was chasing a bootlegger, and car got away from him, went into a telephone pole, and it was a serious wreck, and he was laid up for a long time.
You come home one day, you just got in a fight with a neighborhood kid who was bigger than you. Why does he make you go back out to finish the fight?
I remember he was standing on the porch, and I came down the street. I think I was crying, and I don't know how old I was. I'm guessing like 7, 8, something like that. And so my dad was on the front porch, and he goes just like this. He goes, and I looked at him, he goes, back up the street and finish this. You know what I mean? I think I went back up and got whipped again.
I guess you were playing baseball.
Yeah.
And umpire did something to rub your dad the wrong way.
Yeah, I was kind of on the side warming up a pitcher. And, I wasn't in the game, and so they started this big rhubarb out on the field, and I yelled something, and the third baseman, who I kind of knew, he's kind of cross town, I kind of knew him, and so he said something to me, and so we get into it. And so I still remember we're wrestling, we're trying to punch each other and stuff, and we're on the ground. And all of a sudden, I felt this arm around my neck like this because I was on top, and it was the coach from the other team. And about that time, he had his arm around it, and all of a sudden, he was gone. And I looked, and it was my dad had come out of the stands, and he had hit him. And then all the attention went away from me and the fight that we were having to my dad and the manager. And so the funny thing was, I get home, and I heard this. It was just classic, my dad. He was over, and he was leaning on the fence with a neighbor next door. And so I get out of the car, and I start walking to the house. And I remember my dad goes like this. He goes, yeah, he said, me and the kid, he said, we had to take care of a few guys today over at the baseball game. So that was my dad. That's the way my dad dealt with things.
You crash your car, end up at a juvenile detention center.
Yeah.
What happens when your dad shows up?
That was not pretty. So my folks were out of town. I just got my driver's license, and I'm with a couple of buddies, and we did a thing or two we shouldn't have done. And I wind up in juvenile hall in Long Beach. And my folks weren't home, so they tried to call my folks, weren't there, so I stayed in there all night. And so the next morning, it was like about 10 o'clock, my mom and dad show up, and they take me into the superintendent's office. And so my mom and dad are over here, sitting in a chair, I'm over here, and this superintendent starts in on my dad, and he goes, this kid was out after 11 o'clock. He was doing, and he gets about 2 minutes into this thing, and my dad sprang out of the chair across the room, grabbed me by the throat, took me back over the chair. He's got me in a corner like this, and he's going, raised under the arm of the law. I'm going to kill you right here. And so he choked me. About that time, the superintendent was trying to get him off with my mom, and they finally get my dad off of me. And I thought to myself, this ain't going to happen again. You know what I mean? And there was immediate correction there. And so when he got me home, he says, hey, I kind of lost my poise there, but he said, we don't want any more of that. And I says, no, sir, we're not getting any more of that. But thank goodness for my mom and the superintendent, because they saved me, I think.
You put in your book that your mom, I guess because your dad would drink heavily at times, that your mom would have you and your brother play outside to just avoid witnessing some of it. What would happen when he was at his worst?
No, I think my dad just had issues there, and there were times, he was always a dad. He was not, you know, he around our house and everything. It was just that he had some issues there with drinking, and so when that would happen, I kind of was spoiled, I said to people, because my mom would always insulate me and my brother. You know, she would give us some money, go to the show, to whatever, go to my aunt and uncles. You know what I mean? She would and so I kind of was really spoiled in a way, because I got almost anything I want, you know. But my mom was just, she was just really a saint. She just always protected us. My mom took care of us and watched us, and my dad was always the provider, even though he had some issues there.